Hello!
Hi, Internet!
We're back for episode 9 of Hot Dogs.
Back at it again. Hi, Goslings.
He did it. He referred to as Goslings. So we're going to talk to our hot Goslings today about bodies. Beach season is upon us. Our news feeds, our psyches are being bombarded with messages about what kind of body we're supposed to have, and everybody has a fraught or wonderful or beautiful or complicated relationship with their bodies, and we just want to speak about it.
We've all got bodies.
We've all got bodies. Here we are in the flesh, and we brought an awesome human, Kirsten, with us, an expert and professional queer, and they're going to introduce themselves as well.
Hi, I'm Kirsten. My pronouns are she and her, and I volunteer in the community at the Equality Community Center at 511 Congress. I'm also the Secretary of Pride Portland.
Awesome. And we are so excited to hear your thoughts about this very important topic. So let's get right to it. My first question for you and for our followers, hello, is why are we talking about bodies as a consent and healthy relationship organization?
Yeah, well, I think that it's, and that's an awesome question. I think that it's so much like the popular dialogue right now in like media and in the world is about consent in relation to like very specific sexual acts, and that's obviously really important and so much of what we do talk about and care about. But that's not the whole story, right? It's like leaving out this very important piece of like, what are we using to carry out these sexual or intimate acts with? It's bodies. Like, what are we performing them on? Bodies. And so it was really important to make sure that we're like honoring that and talking about it.
And I think too that there's a really important element about self-consent where these specific acts and what parts of our bodies we're using for them gives us an opportunity to check in with ourselves and be like, oh yeah, that would feel nice. And then maybe, they ask about something else, and well, maybe not today or maybe not right now, but giving ourselves the opportunity to feel empowered in that moment and say, yes, this is actively something I want to do, I think is really important.
Mm-hmm. So when you say self-consent, you mean the ability to give consent, checking in with yourself and understanding that you're doing that without pressure and coercion and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So whether that coercion is coming from what society has been telling us our whole lives or something that we feel like, me as a fat person, if I have this, conventionally attractive, thin person who like wants to be intimate with me, I don't want to feel like I have to indulge that just because I think, oh, well, no one like that is ever going to want me again. Spoiler alert, they will.
Have you seen me? People
If you were not having
it. Mic drop.
We're done. So, sort of along that vein, why is the language that we use to talk about bodies so important in this conversation?
It's not like, as like people in an organization called Speak About It, it's like it's like no wonder we think that language is important.
Still a good question.
Yeah, still a good question. And I think that like there's so much power and like just like so much psychic energy in the words that we use. Like there's so many things that are tied to it, and so like there's and I think also honestly like there's like a lot of potential for empowerment and like for like feeling like engaged and sexy in the language that we use. And that's important, right? Because like there's a lot of values there, and so. Well, for example, like I think the word ass is really sexy, but I think that like the word like butt is a dumb word, and so it's like if I'm like hooking up with someone and they're talking about my butt, like I don't feel like sexy with that, right? And that doesn't feel like a good thing, but it's like it is really empowering for me to talk about my own ass and for me like other people to say things about my ass, and so like that feels good. And I think like relatedly, like there's this also these like power differentials too, right? So like when we talk about like someone that's like that thick, right? That like thick is right now like one of these terms that people are using, and it feels like very like body positive and like very forward to use that term. But it's also like referring to a body type entirely in relation to like another body type that's like considered the norm and the ideal. And that might not feel sexy, especially considering that like a lot of like people of color are the ones that are like being talked about as being thick. And then that just like feels like it feels like fetishistic, and then also like wondering about like co-opting of the term, and I don't know, it's messy. So.
Yeah, I think also it's important to talk about trans bodies and how language around sex acts and sex organs, and that's really important to consider when you have a lover who is trans. And it's a wonderful conversation to have ahead of time. It's so sexy and so empowering to be like, okay, so how do you refer to this part of your body? Oh, you're not sure yet? Let's talk about some options. I had this one lover who was just completely blown away when I was like, have you ever thought about thinking about that act as this? And they were like, oh.
Interesting.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the euphemisms that we use for our bodies, like someone who is butch identified or trans identified, they may not want you to refer to their chest as anything other than their chest. So for me, if you use a different euphemism, that's fine. For them, it might not feel good.
Interesting, yeah.
So talking about this positive language makes me think about this body positivity movement. And I am interested in what your own personal definitions of body positivity are.
Do you want to start this one? Or
Sure. For me, body positivity is really about kind of creating a culture of self-acceptance and self-worth, and that really, it takes a team. So, whether it's the work that I do with my therapist or the work that I do with my partners around, hey, I'm feeling kind of insecure, here's what I'm feeling, here's why, and, my best friends and my community in situations like this. Just being like, hey, like, this is something that I want to feel actively good in my body, I want to be present. How can we sort of fend off the bullshit that's coming in from the outside?
Start responding. There's just a comment. There's a thank you for realizing that trans bodies might require different language, and super important.
What does body positivity mean to you?
Oh, yes. So I think that body positivity for me is all about acknowledging and accepting and respecting the fact and celebrating the fact that there's so many different sizes and shapes of like bodies that we get that are in the world. And I made this like dumb joke earlier, but it's like not like a one size fits all. And like there is no specific way of doing it. I think that like so much of like media and pop culture, it's like fed to us that there's one way of being attractive. There's like one body that we should be striving for, and it's this like cis, white, skinny form, and like everything. Oh, definitely able-bodied. And it's like I'm just making this assumption that skinny, able-bodied equals like healthy equals sexy, and that's like those three things like aren't always like exactly related. And so
for me, I'm going to answer my own question.
Yeah.
I've been really interested in this conversation about body positivity and like the marketability of it. And so like body positivity is really like in right now. But like in the sort of mainstream way, it's like in if it's marketable, if it makes money, it's still playing into this like politics of acceptability. So like, yes, you can be fat, but only if you're thick or curvy. Yes,
if you're an hourglass.
If you're an hourglass, not an apple, like yes, you can have scars, but only if you like show them off in a sexy way. And like it's all in this sort of like system of making profit. And that doesn't seem to me to be like the community response that you're talking about, or like this all-inclusive sort of response that you're talking about. And so it brings me to think about like who in the mainstream is allowed to be body positive. So who do you think?
I think that like in the mainstream, like not everybody,
right.
I think that like the world as it should be, like it's a movement for everybody. Like everybody has a body. And so I think that it's like this should be a movement that is for all of us. I think it's really easy for like any marginalized identity that you have, and like especially like, as you add them on, I think it becomes like in life just harder. But also like in this like conversation about body positivity, it becomes harder and harder to see yourself represented. And so it's like we've had this conversation about which hot gossip was, but about representation, and that representation is so important. And if you don't see yourself around, you don't see any examples of people saying like, oh, that's sexy, this person's sexy, then like it's hard for you to see that about yourself. You think that like it kind of makes you unsex yourself, and that's really dangerous. So like this should be for everyone, like body positivity and like valuing your body that's an everyone thing.
Do you have thoughts to add?
Yeah, I think too that it's the intersectionality of it is really important. You can have like the fat body that is also just the right shape, or you can have the body that's using a mobility device, but that is also thin and white and cis, and like so you don't see that intersection very often. There's some really awesome queer blogs out there that are doing amazing work. Meg Allen has this project called Butch, and there's a lot of great diversity of race and body size and age. Age is another big one. You don't really see representation of our elders who are amazing and beautiful.
Right. We see them if they look like Helen Mirren, but we don't see them like as they may appear in the real world. Not that Helen Mirren is not a real person.
She's a myth. She's not real.
But she's one version of a real person that is that age.
Well, it's fascinating. We actually just this past Friday, right, went to a retirement home and talked to folks there about like sex and intimacy in their later years. And it was such an awesome experience. That was something like at the beginning, we're like, what does the term elderly mean to you? And they're like, we hate it. Like, and they're like, it doesn't feel right. And like, there's no time in society that we're taught to value elderly sexuality or like sexuality in later years. And so
it goes right back to that conversation of language and the kind of language that we use to refer to bodies and to people, and how that reinforces stereotypes.
And it's a great ongoing conversation too. Like that's something that so Sage Main is an advocacy group that's also in the Quality Community Center. So they do all work with our elders, our community elders. And so for me, like elders is a word that denotes appreciation and respect. And so taking off the lead, the elder lead, it's like, okay, this is a position that you have earned in my esteem.
Honorific,
It's a reframing. So related to that, speaking from experience, it can be really hard to get to that point where you're able to reframe to love your body. And so can you talk about some of the barriers that might be there for loving your body?
Voices from your childhood. Like I know so many people who, before they even hit puberty were being put on diets by their mom, usually folks who are assigned female at birth. So that's a really huge one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that there's it's like this interaction with the world, right? Or like this like fear of interacting with the world. And so we talked, like, as anyone that knows me, like my hair is recently very different than what it was literally yesterday. And it's this like interesting process of like men in general don't have like a ton of like hair options like historically or like or societally. I think especially Black men, like there's like only so many hair options that like are like socially accepted because so many of them are tied to like being a thug or being a gangster. And so like it's like not even like this like violence that I'm doing to myself, like in like how I interact with my body. It's like how I'm thinking other people are going to interact with me and like perceive me and my body, which is like really fascinating.
And so we don't exist in these vacuums. Our bodies exist in relationship to other people, and attraction is very coded and affects how we relate to other people. So can we talk a little bit about attraction, especially in regards to body and body type, and how that might play into this body positivity movement or moment a little bit? Where does attraction play into that?
I think it like ties back. So, quick question. There's a good comment that's talking about basically. So I'll just read it. What are your thoughts on the word sexy? Like if I think someone is sexy or attractive and they're comfortable in their body, but they don't identify with being sexy, like what do we do? Like in our culture of sex sells, do we need to find another way of articulating attraction? I think that's actually like really kind of tied
into that.
And I think that it loops back almost to our conversation that we had in the intersectionality piece about really challenging what it is that we think is attractive, right? And like why we think these things are attractive, and like are we objectifying a person? Like are we just trying to like reinforce these like societal views of what is beautiful and what is attractive? Because like obviously naturally there's going to be some things you just find yourself more drawn to than another, which is like to a certain extent fine, but also like really think it's like critically important to challenge yourself and look at like why do I think this thing is attractive, right? Am I just upholding these harmful beliefs? Like am I actually like attracted to this person?
Any thoughts?
I had a partner who words like babe or honey or those sort of terms of endearment didn't feel good to them. And so when they said that, I was like, oh, cool. Now I know. Is there something that feels better to you? And so like having that sort of having those conversations with your partners and having the ease to be able to say, hey, can we try something different? Is really critical.
So it seems like it's very a relational thing. And I think part of why we started having this conversation about bodies in particular was Oronde and I had this conversation in the office about what to do when your body and your partner's bodies are changing, and like how do we deal with differences in how we relate to each other via our bodies when we talk about that. Any thoughts?
I think this is where I just shout out to polyamory, and it's a really lovely thing to have this sort of community of folks and be able to like connect with one of your members and be able to say, hey, I'm having these feelings. Are you having these feelings? Can we talk about these feelings? Or also your support community, your closest friend, your therapist. I think it is important to talk to your partner, but especially if your partner's going through changes that feel really good to them, it's great to have an opportunity to be with someone who can hear your feelings and hear your fears or your concerns, and then help you process them to a place where they're sort of distilled down to what's real. And to then be able to go back to your partner and say, I was feeling like this, I did some work, I did some talking, and here's what I came up with. So, and then you have that sort of positive thing to move forward.
So it's like honoring the change that may be happening in their body without like derailing that good feeling that you're having. Thinking about yourself. That makes me feel really good hearing that you had that experience. I had an experience where I was struggling with some weight loss that a partner had experienced.
Thanks, Olivia.
And it it took me a really long time to just, by myself, to distill down this realization that it wasn't about their body. It was about how their body now looked in relationship to my body and how I thought that was being perceived externally. And it comes back to the thing we talked about originally about who deserves to be sexy and who deserves to be in association with thin, fit people, and that's
I think it loops back around to like how like our relationship with our body is so tied to our relationship with other people's bodies, right?
Exactly.
Because like I've been in that situation too, where it's like oh, like all of a sudden like they're getting abs and they're really into abs now. Does that mean that they only think abs are attractive? Do I need to work out? Like, it's like all of a sudden like loops into like, and it's like no, like there's working out a lot. There's like exercise. That's nothing to do with me. Right. But yeah, it's hard to divorce the two.
Mm-hmm. And that's when you might need that reinforcement of that armor that you have from your community and your supports and your, you know, the places that you're able to go that help you to feel your stuff is in check and in place.
And so a lot of these conversations feel very similar to conversations that we've had about sex positivity. And so I'm wondering where you think the intersections are between sex positivity and body positivity.
Yeah, I think that like they're like definitely really related movements. I think that like sex positivity, so much of it is this conversation about like anything is fine so long as it's like consensual and like everyone is like no one's being harmed and everyone is like on the same page and enjoying what's happening. And so that means that like abstinence might be fine, like polyamory might be fine, like having sex with like one person every wedding night might be fine, like whatever. And I think body positivity is this, like I said, this acceptance and acknowledgement and like in celebration of like all the different body types that like feel that exist and are all like right in and of themselves. And so I think that point of intersection is both of them are saying that kind of regardless of what society is telling you, regardless of what messaging that you're getting, is that like what makes you feel like good and empowered and sexy is good and should be celebrated. And so yeah, there's definitely that connection between the two of them.
Yeah, sure. Do you have thoughts to add to that or complicate that?
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that like slut shaming and kink shaming are things that we certainly don't want to have happen to us in our communities especially. But that's also information that we can choose to retain and not share, whereas our bodies are out here for people to see. And you know, you can't sort of choose who gets to know about that part of you. And so it's, you know, we don't exist in a vacuum. We don't get to choose to say, oh, you don't get to see that I'm fat because I know you're going to judge me.
And so there are certain things about body positivity that we have to like work to build community around in order to like help bodies
either confronted or just be victimized.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that I hadn't thought about. I also think, Oronde, you had brought up a point about modesty.
Yeah, I think that like that accepting the fact that just because somebody like dresses in a certain way, like if somebody like doesn't choose to like display their body or like portray anything in any particular way, that doesn't mean they're not body positive, right? So like if someone's like wearing a hijab or like someone just doesn't dress conservatively or whatever, like doesn't mean they're not sex positive. It doesn't mean that they like aren't confident in their body. It just means that they're choosing not to show it at that time. You know, that like so like while sex positivity and body positivity are really closely tied, they're definitely not the same thing. You know, like, there's points in which like they are just entirely divorced.
But I think that's where sex positivity and body positivity are, that spectrum is sort of struggling. It's like acknowledging that choosing not to have sex is still sex positivity. Acknowledging to choose not to show off your body, if that's like an empowered choice that you're making, is still body positivity. I think that's a really important part of the conversation to be having.
I think also that there's a really big gender piece around that because clothing is obviously so gendered in society's eyes. So if there's somebody who, you know, maybe they're trans-identified and their pronouns are he and him, if they want to display their body in ways that society perceives as feminine, that doesn't change their gender, that doesn't change their pronouns. Like we as a society need to accept that within the, you know, within each gender, there are all different ways to present your body.
Yeah. So we always like to provide some tangible tips and tricks.
Takeaways.
We're not that we're not at the takeaways yet. Well, I guess it's a takeaway. But like some tips and tricks and takeaways. Hey everybody. For people to literally take away with them. And so I'm wondering if you folks have, in addition to all the examples you've already given, some additional tips for how to have a sexy, if that's what you want, consensual conversation about your body and your partner's body with the people that you're hooking up with.
Okay.
Hannah Blank has a really wonderful book called Big Big Love.
Who is it?
Hannah Blank.
Hannah
HANNEEBLANK. So absolutely recommend.
Big Big Love.
big love.
We'll
Cool.
post that on the blog.
Put it on the blog. Sweet.
Yeah.
Just an ask. Sweet. I've got a couple of points. I love takeaways. And so I always say like I statements are so helpful, and and I think you actually phrased them all really well. It's like making sure that you're going in and like not throwing all this emotional work back on your partner who's done all these things they feel like really great maybe, and you're like, you stressed me out by changing your body. Like, don't make this stuff. Yeah, like don't do that. And so it's like, like definitely put in some work on your own end and like try to like figure out like what is it that's going on for me, what's this bringing up. Using again those I statements to have that conversation, like trying to. I think so much of our thing just in general to speak about it is having like these fair, open, honest dialogues, and like that always starts like internally first, and then like you kind of take that step out and bring it to the other person. So I think that, and I think also remembering that like every body is a beach body. Like rock your abs, rock your belly folds, like rock your skin with scars, rock your like clear skin, whatever. Like just like whatever feels good and right to you. Like it's yours, own it, and like be proud of it.
Yeah, that seems like a beautiful and empowering note to end on.
Yeah.
Any last things that you want to throw to our crowd before we say goodbye?
I'm going to show my beach body.
You can do that. Yeah, Oronde's wearing swim trunks this entire time. You just can't tell. All right, well, folks, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you, our internet following. We've got a ton of people on Instagram. That was a new thing that we tried. If you have questions, feel free to post them in the comments. We'll be following this up with a blog post all about body stuff with some of the great information that Kirsten shared with us, as well as some other stuff I found on the internet. Yay! So thanks again, and join us next month for #HotGoss.
Bye, Gosslings!